Namaste all, and welcome to our continuing series of the Life Divine with our beloved Ranga. So we're around page 800, and we're going back to the summary of the previous paragraph.
So I told you that this chapter is a very difficult one. So we'll have to keep seeing what is his the sequence of his arguments. Okay, we have to see. So the philosophy of rebirth. The first question that arises is there really a rebirth or not? That's the first question. And then he says that there are many theories which say that rebirth is not necessary, it is not there at all. And some say that yes, it is there. So he takes up the theories which say there is no rebirth at all. Materialism and Mayavada, okay? So they say there is no need of rebirth, there is no rebirth at all. So, then he says that even if rebirth is there, what is the purpose of the rebirth? So he analyzes and says that there must be a purpose to rebirth. So he comes to this conclusion that if we grant that there is an evolution in the world and the individual is real, in Buddhism the individual is not real, in Mayavada the individual may not be real in some senses, okay? Materialism, there is no soul at all, so the question doesn't arise. So if the individual is real and the evolution is there and the individual is related to the evolution, then rebirth becomes necessary. Why? Because in one life, in 100 years, even if you grant him 100 years, he cannot become a realized soul, he cannot realize his potentialities in 100 years, it's not possible. So there has to be necessarily rebirth. The soul experiences something in the physical world for 100 years or whatever, and then he goes into subtler worlds and then comes back again for a rebirth. He takes birth again for further development because of evolution. Now, he says that if there is evolution and the individual is taking birth, when the physical body, mind, life is destroyed in the physical world after death, the soul, if it exists, it has to go into subtler worlds. So are there subtler worlds? And how many are there? So this is what he discusses. So he says, let us take the simple case of only two, the spiritual world, spirit and matter. So there is nothing in between them. So he discusses this fully, and then he says, the very fact that if there is only spirit and matter, how is the material world created? So if only these two are there, who has created the material world? And then he says there could be a discussion that it is desire that has created the world, or it is that it is not desire, Srimata says it's not, but Ananda. So why does the spirit create the world? Because of enjoyment. So that's one theory. Then he comes to, okay, let us see, but we see that there are only not two worlds. We also see that there is a vital world and a mental world. So there must be also subtler worlds in between. So then, why only two? There could be many more. And experience shows us that there can be 7 planes according to the Vedic tradition. So Sat, Chit, Ananda, supermind, or you call it Vijnana, and then you have mind, life, body. So we'll proceed now on the basis of this thing, that the universe is created not because of desire, but because of the Ananda. The spirit wants to enjoy and explore its own possibilities. That's why it creates the world. And the individual is very real. The one all soul, when it comes down, it undergoes the law of the one becoming the many. So the all soul, the one divine soul, manifests itself here in many, many souls. Essentially, each soul is divine, but here it is covered up with the veils of matter, life and mind. So you don't see the soul here, but it is covered up. if you go into the higher worlds and get the capacity to see beyond these three worlds, you will see that the soul is here, even in the physical world. The divine presence is here. Okay? So, I am reading this summary of up to what we have come, then we will read them. So, in the previous para, he has said, this is my summary, not straight those words. Continuing the discussion of the individual idea of desire that has created the world, we have to admit then that the individual must have existed before the world was created. If desire has created the world, who is creating desire? The individual soul. So that means to say he is existing before the physical world. So he is superior in time, if at all you can use the word time. It is in causality at least. The individual exists before the world is created. Okay, so he says, this means that the superconscious one, the many, were immanent. The many are possibilities in that one soul. It is then conceivable that a universal spiritual necessity to manifest may have got into, or at least some of the many, and made them descend into the world of existence. So, if desire is the creator, it is possible. But let us see. Spirit is of the nature of the infinite. Okay? And we have to see that spirit, can it have desire at all? He analyzes that. And desire is there when you feel something lacking in you. When you don't possess something, desire comes, I want that, which is not present in me. But does the divine have any lack? Is there any gap? Is there something that he really wants and he doesn't have? Impossible. Because we started with the theory that the divine is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. So he has everything. So what is the reason then? Only for Ananda. Only for the bliss of creation, the ecstasy of creation. Okay, so now another fact he mentions that the one is creating the many, and the many is not creating the one. So the spirit is creating matter, but matter is not creating spirit. It looks in the physical world when we see that matter is producing life and life is producing mind. But he says if you look deeper, it's not like that at all. It's a spirit that is creating these things. Okay? So, with this background, we start reading the para that we read last time, but we'll go into detail. But once we admit this will of the Supreme and Cosmic Being as the indispensable condition of the existence of the material universe, it is no longer possible to accept desire as a creative principle. We have to rule out desire because we have accepted the supreme will. The divine is creating the world. And the divine doesn't need desire. So there must be some other reason. Okay? So we have to throw out the idea of desire creating the world. For desire has no place in the supreme or the all-being. It can have nothing to desire. Desire is a result of incompleteness, of insufficiency, of something that is not possessed or enjoyed, and which the being seeks for possession or enjoyment. A supreme and universal being can have the delight of its all existence, but to that delight, desire must be foreign. So, we have an idea that when our desire is satisfied, then there is satisfaction and there is ananda. But Swami is saying it need not be like that at all. Okay? So, a supreme and universal being can have the delight of its existence. It can enjoy. But to that delight, desire must be foreign. It's an enjoyment without desire. It can only be the appanage. Okay? The word appanage means provision made for royal children. Okay? It's a heritage left by parents for their offspring. That's the appanage. Now, what is that? So, there is desire. We are having the desire here, and something else is creating the desire here. So that's the heritage that we are getting, and that's why we have desire here, but not there. Okay, so incomplete evolutionary ego, which is the product of cosmic action. Moreover, if the all consciousness of the spirit has willed to plunge into the inconscience of matter, it must be because there is a possibility of its self creation or manifestation. But a sole material universe and an evolution there out of inconscience into spiritual consciousness cannot be the one solitary and limited possibility of manifestation in the all being. That could only be if matter were the original power and form of manifested being, and the spirit had no other choice, could not manifest except through inconscience into matter as a basis. So, his discussion, I told you, it goes into very great logic and all that, but it is basically matter can't produce something by itself. But the divine has the power to create, and it is the divine who creates all these things. This would bring us to a materialistic evolutionary pantheism. There you are. In other words, pantheism says that the last reality is the universe itself, and the universe is the divine presence. Pantheism is a belief that there is a, call it divine presence or a subtle presence or whatever you want, it is there in the universe, nothing beyond that. That's a pantheism. Okay, so this would bring us to a materialistic evolutionary pantheism. We would have to regard the beings who people the universe as souls of the one, souls born here in it and evolving upwards through inanimate, animate, and mentally developed forms till the recovery of their complete and undivided life in the superconscious pantheos and its cosmic oneness would intervene in the end and the goal of their evolution. So, souls are there, but they will go only up to the pantheistic level. That's all, nothing up beyond that. Okay. Then, in that case, everything has evolved here. Life, mind, soul have arisen out of the one in the material universe by the force of its hidden being, and everything will fulfill itself here in the material universe. So, Srimad is examining every possibility. So, sometimes he goes into great detail to see if this is possible. No. He is anticipating questions from others and who are challenging his theory, and he is anticipating and giving answers. Okay, so this is the theory that everything is stopping at the pantheistic level. There is then no separate plane of the superconscious, for the superconscious is here only, not elsewhere. It stops at the universal nature. There are no supraphysical worlds. There is no action of supraphysical principles exterior to matter, no pressure of an already existing mind and life upon the material plane. So, as I told you, he goes into great detail, but in short what he is saying is, I am reading the summary. Okay, so we have come to the conclusion that it is the all will of the superconscious that creates the world. Desire then cannot have created the earthly existence. Desire has no place in the Supreme Being, which is self-sufficient and needs nothing. Desire is born from a want, an incompleteness, absence of satisfaction. Also, when the superconscious manifests the material world, it must be because of one of the infinite possibilities inherent in it. Why at all did the spirit create the material world? So, because the divine is infinite, and you cannot say that the divine will create only limited things. He is going to create infinitely. So, one of the infinite possibilities is manifesting himself. So, that's why it's necessary. Now, he comes to the question, okay, so the superconscious is creating the material world. But are there only two worlds or are there more worlds? Okay? Is it that only two planes exist, matter and spirit? Is spirit bound to produce only one plane, that of matter? That would mean a sort of materialistic pantheism. Okay? We would then have to regard the souls as evolving out of matter and reaching some sort of oneness here on earth itself. There would then be no superconscious plane. There would be no pressure from the life plane and mind plane on the material world for evolution, if there are only two planes. Okay? As I told you, he is examining every possibility. So he says, we take up the possibility of two planes and then he will reject it. Why? The next para. It has then to be asked, what mind and life? What are mind and life? And it may be answered that they are products of matter or of the energy in matter. So, mind and life are powers which are not material. And you are saying the material world is the only world. So, from where is mind and life coming? So, one answer can be that it is matter itself which is creating this. Science will say it is a chemical reaction at the material level which is creating life and mind. Okay, I told you even about the Indian materialists. Okay, and they say to repeat the image, you take green beetle leaves and you take chunam. Chunam is
White.
calcium, lime. You mix the two and you get red. So green and white is producing red. So in that case, why can't matter produce life and mind? That's a possibility. Okay, so that's what he's discussing. It can be answered that they are products of matter or of the energy in matter, or else they are forms of consciousness that arise as results of an evolution from inconscious to superconscious. Consciousness itself is only a bridge of transition. It is spirit becoming partially aware of itself before plunging into its normal trance of luminous superconscious. Now, there is an evolution and these planes are being created in that way. The word trance of luminous superconscious is the highest level where is a transcendent consciousness. Note the word trance. That means it is completely concentrated within itself, not aware of anything other than itself. Okay? Luminous superconscious. It's a sleep. In our Indian philosophy, we say that the three worlds, if you think of it as three worlds, the gross world, the subtle world, and the sleep world, the causal world, and that is sleep. The first is described as waking consciousness, the second is described as dream consciousness, and the third is described as deep sleep. The deep sleep it's not our sleep, it's a sleep where there is full consciousness. That's why he uses the word luminous superconscious. Okay? And that's the state, this is the state where the divine has not created the world. Human being can experience the transcendent consciousness. He will feel himself to be outside the universe and he is conscious only of himself within himself. Okay? That is what trance of luminous superconsciousness means. Even if there proved to be planes of larger life and mind, they would only be subjective constructions of this intermediary consciousness erected on the way to that spiritual culmination. But the difficulty here is that mind and life are too different from matter to be products of matter. Matter itself is a product of energy, and mind and life must be regarded as superior products of the same energy. If we admit the existence of a cosmic spirit, the energy must be spiritual. Life and mind must be independent products of a spiritual energy and themselves powers of manifestation in the spirit. It then becomes irrational to suppose that spirit and matter alone exist, that they are two confronting realities, and that matter is the sole possible basis of the manifestation of spirit. The idea of the sole material world being immediately untenable, okay, the idea of a sole material world becomes immediately untenable. Spirit must be capable of basing its manifestations on the mind principle or on the life principle, and not only on the principle of matter. There can then be, and logically there should be, worlds of mind and worlds of life. There may even be worlds founded on a subtler and more plastic, more conscious principle of matter. So, he's saying it's possible to have subtle matter, life plane, universal life plane, universal mind plane, and these are independent. Now, if you think that these worlds are existing, many questions arise. The first question that arises is, we'll read the para, then we'll go into details. 3 questions then arise. On what basis are we saying this? There is the world of matter, there is the world of life, there is the world of mind, and there may be other worlds also. Okay, so if that is so, then 3 questions arise. Note the way Srivastava proceeds. He is always going step by step, and eliminating things which don't conform to his view of life. And he has told us what the view of life is. There is superconscious that produces the universe, and the individual is real as well as the evolution is real. 3 questions then arise. Interrelated or independent. Now, I told you many times that Srivastava doesn't use words unnecessarily. So what's the difference between interrelated and interdependent? Do they mean the same thing? No, there is a difference. It's very interesting to note that. Interrelated and interdependent. An example of interrelated, 2 friends. They don't depend upon each other, but they are related, they are friends. But take the case of a mother and a child. Okay? The child depends on the mother, dependent on the child. And in some way you can also say that the mother is dependent on the child's responding to her. Okay? So see how interestingly Srivastava is using words. Interrelated and interdependent. So these words, are they related or are they not related at all? And if they are related, are they interrelated or interdependent? Okay? So, whether there is any evidence or any true intimation of the existence of such other worlds, okay, that's a question. Okay? So, whether, if they exist, they are of the nature we have indicated, arising or descending in the order within the rationale of a hierarchical series between matter and spirit. So, the first question is that if they are there, do they exist at all or not? And secondly, if they are there, are they related or not? Then the other question which he is now asking is, are they of the nature that I have spoken about? In other words, the highest is the subtlest and the cause of the lowest. And the lowest is the result of the higher. And as you keep going up, there is a hierarchical gradation. The grossest is at the bottom, the subtlest is at the highest level. The incapacity and imperfection is the lower level, and as you keep going higher and higher, imperfection starts reducing and perfection starts increasing as you go. Is that the nature of these worlds? He is asking. Second question. Okay. Then finally, the third one, whether they exist, they are of nature indicated, arising and descending in the and within the rationale of an hierarchical series between matter and spirit. If that is their scale of being, are they otherwise quite independent and unconnected, or is there a relation and interaction of the higher worlds on the world of matter? So, is it that they are totally independent and one doesn't influence the other, or is it that there is an influence? Okay, so now we will discuss that. A very interesting discussion. Okay, it is a fact that mankind, almost from the beginning of its existence, or so far back as history or tradition can go, has believed in the existence of other worlds and in the possibility of communication between their powers and beings and the human race. Okay? Now, in the last rationalistic period of human thought from which we are emerging, okay? Now, what is this last rationalistic period of human thought? He is talking about the materialism. Okay? So, if there is in that period, thought from which we are emerging, this belief has been swept aside as an age-long superstition. So, science and materialism doesn't believe that there is any higher planes, that matter is the only plane. All evidence or intimations of its truth have been rejected a priori. Now, what is a priori? A priori means without you assume certain things without proving them. Okay. So when you say that no, they don't exist, have you examined, or are you on what basis are you saying that it doesn't exist? So that is a priori. Science says, no, my senses can't see, therefore they don't exist. Okay, that's what it means. Have been rejected a priori as fundamentally false and undeserving of inquiry. You don't even need to examine them, because incompatible with the axiomatic truth that only matter and the material world and its experiences are real. Axiom. There's a priori is connected with that. You start with axiom. What is an axiom? An axiom is a theorem which you assume to be true without proof. Okay. In all mathematical logic also, you have to use with a starting point which you take for granted, and then you build upon that. So science is doing exactly that. I believe that the physical world is the only world without examination. Now that's an axiom. Okay, so that only matter in the material world and its experiences are real. All other experience purporting to be real must be either a hallucination or an imposture or a subjective result of superstitious credulity and imagination, or else, if a fact, then other than what is purported to be and explicable by a physical cause. So he is giving you 4 cases. You have to look at each case what he is saying. When he says or, you have to examine everything. Okay, so all other experience. Which is the other experience he's talking about? Psychological experiences. Okay, so that which is not material. All other experience purporting to be real. Pretending to be. Okay, purporting is, I think that it is like that. Okay, this is the difference between purport and purpose. Okay, so purport is to declare that it is like this. Okay, so pretending to be like that, or asserting that it is like that. All other experiences purporting to be real must either be a hallucination. Who is saying this? The materialist. He is saying it's a hallucination or an imposture. There is falsehood. The man who is declaring that he has experienced subtle things is an imposter. He is a hypocrite. Okay, he is not telling the truth. Or a subjective result of superstitious credulity and imagination. So science is saying either hallucination or hypocrisy or superstition. Okay, so imagination, or else if a fact. Now, okay, let's say it's a fact, then other than what it purported to be and explicable by physical cause. So if it is real, subtler things are real, it must have a physical cause, not a higher cause, a physical cause. Okay, so no evidence could be accepted of such a fact unless it is objective and physical in its character. Now, objective means not subjective but objective. Okay, something that doesn't depend upon your inner but in the outer, physical in its character. Even if the fact be very apparently supraphysical, it cannot be accepted as such unless it is totally unexplainable by any other imaginable hypothesis or conceivable conjecture. So, let us say that things are subtler realities are truth. Okay, then even then you must be able to explain it from here. Even if you see experience is subtler, like for instance apparitions, okay, ghost phenomena. So you are seeing, but it must have a physical cause, not a higher cause. Now that's what he said in this para. I am reading the summary. Okay. Then 3 questions arise which may be interrelated. Number 1, is there any evidence of the existence of such supraphysical planes? Do they exist at all? Secondly, if they exist at all, are they hierarchical in a graded series from gross to subtle? That's the second question. The third one, are they interrelated or are they interdependent? Do they have any influence on the material world? Now you see how far away we have come from the question of rebirth. He is examining the possibility of these worlds. Why? Because if there is rebirth, the soul, when it leaves the physical world, has to go into supraphysical worlds. So he is now examining whether these supraphysical worlds exist or not, and what are their nature. So far away from rebirth we have come. Okay. This is how Swami is going into great detail. He goes into everywhere. And then you are likely to get lost in that current of the side issues. Okay. He'll come back to it. Okay. From the earliest times of human history, man has believed in the existence of these planes and has documented the interaction between the denizens of various planes, including the material world. But modern man, in the rationalistic age, has insisted on the reality of only the material world and demands physical proof of these planes, even if they are apparently supraphysical. Okay? There are many things which are supraphysical. You can mention, as I said, apparitions. Okay? You can see there are many phenomena which occur which you can't explain in the physical world. I'll mention 2 or 3. One is what is called extrasensory perception. There are people who can make things move. Okay? It's got a German name, poltergeist phenomena. Suddenly you will see in the kitchen all these vessels are moving. It's very rare, but it does happen. Or there is a very famous case in America of a truck carrying Coca-Cola bottles, hundreds of them in one truck. Suddenly, for one reason, what it was, I'll just give a brief this thing, all the bottles broke without movement. So these are supraphysical phenomena, but they must have an explanation in the physical world. That's what he's saying. Actually, what happens, these things are, because when there is a medium, there has to be someone who is a medium for these things to happen. I mentioned particularly the phenomena in the guest house. Okay? The stones falling from nowhere. They had employed a new cook, a new boy, and he was the medium through which somebody dissatisfied with the ashram was doing this phenomena and making stones fall. So stones falling is supraphysical, coming into the physical. In fact, Srimdu says that they tried all sorts of things. They tried to go and see who is throwing these stones. They went out into the street, nobody is there. And yet stones are going on falling. So they were patient and they didn't take any action against this. From where is it coming and what is happening? And one day, one stone hit a sadhak. And then mother said, no, this is serious. We have to see what it is. She concentrated and found out that the origin of all this nonsense is this boy in the kitchen and somebody who is dissatisfied with he was capable of this vital phenomena. He was capable of that. So he was materializing these stones and making them fall in the... So science is insisting that the reason for that all must be material only. But it's not material. Okay, so...
How was the boy a medium?
Pardon?
How was the boy a medium in that?
To produce something, you need a connection. Huh? Without a connection, okay. Say, take the case of electricity. Okay, I have to plug it into the mains I have to make a connection between mine if I want to recharge and the... So there has to be both. There has to be this and there has to be the contact point. So unless that contact point is there, the phenomena can't take place. So it's always through a medium that it happens. Even in the case of this American truck, where all the bottles broke at one time, they had employed a new boy. And that boy is sometimes not capable, not aware of his own mediumness, if you want. Okay? So that's very interesting. Vasant is going to discuss all that now. Okay? So I go to the next para. It should be evident. Okay? It should be evident that this demand for physically valid proof of a supraphysical fact is irrational and illogical. It is an irrelevant attitude of the physical mind which assumes that only the objective and physical is fundamentally real and puts aside all else as merely subjective. A supraphysical fact may impinge on the physical world and produce physical results. It may even produce an effect on our physical senses and become manifest to them. But that cannot be its invariable action and most normal character or process. Somebody is saying that supraphysical things can have an effect on you. Okay, so in the physical world, he is saying, okay, it's interesting. If you have ananda, you will have horripilation, an effect on the body. Okay, or if you see something supraphysical, let's say a ghost, okay, there will be fear in you. There is a physical reaction. So there can be a connection between the supraphysical and the physical, but you can't demand that this has to be always proved. That's what Swami is pointing out. Okay, so a supraphysical fact may impinge on the physical world and produce physical results. Okay, it may even produce an effect on our physical senses and become manifest to them. But that cannot be its invariable action. Now, what is his last thing? What he's saying? It may even produce an effect on our physical senses and become manifest to them. Srimanda and Mother could see people's souls. They could see subtle realities. Okay? So, but you can't insist that every time it has to be like that. But that cannot be its invariable action and most normal character or process. Sometimes it can happen, but not all. The materialist can't insist that I want that every supraphysical phenomena should have a result in the physical world. You can't demand that. It does happen, but you can't demand that. Okay, that's what Sri is pointing out. Ordinarily, it must produce a direct effect or a tangible impression on our mind and our life being, which are parts of us that are of the same order as itself, and can only indirectly and through them, if at all, influence the physical world and physical life. So he is saying that there must be a vibrational equivalence between the subtle world and the subtle part in you. So suppose something is taking place in the vital world, your vital must be consonant. It has to be in the same vibrational level of that. Otherwise, you will not be able to see it. Okay, that's what he's pointing out. This is what is meaning here. Ordinarily, it must produce a direct effect or a tangible impression on our mind and our life being, which are the parts of us that are of the same order as itself. Okay, it has to be in the same vibrational tone and can only indirectly and through them, if at all, influence the physical world or physical life. If it objectivizes itself, it must be to a subtler sense in us and only derivatively to the outward physical sense. Now, if it objectivizes itself, what does it mean? The subtle becomes physically, you can, at least to your senses, not physical, but your senses can see that. That is objectivization. Okay. We know the phenomena of objectivization of matter. Okay. Matter can be materialized. Things can be materialized. They're like the stones falling in the ashram. Okay. So there is a famous case of one of our supposed to be yogis who would create ashes from nothing at all and offer them as their blessings, or he would even create gold rings. Okay. Many people used to discuss, deny that possibility. They say there's some fraud going on. But note that interestingly, the fraud is not necessary. No. This person about whom I'm talking, when he was a very young boy, he found out that he has this power of materialization. Okay? So it can happen. This derivative objectivization is certainly possible. So I'm saying it's possible. If there is an association of the action of the subtle body and its sense organization with the action of the material body with its physical organs, then the supraphysical can become outwardly sensible to us. When can man experience and see or hear, or his senses respond to the supraphysical event? Srimad is explaining. He's saying, if there is an association of the action of the subtle body and its sense organization. Now, what does he mean by sense organization? Just as your body has eyes, ears, nose, and skin, all the 5 senses, the subtle body also has these. The subtle body has sight, hearing, touch, and smell. The subtle. Okay? That's what he's meaning by sense organization. Subtle body and sense organization with the action of the material body and its physical organs. Then the supraphysical will become outwardly sensible to us. I'll give you one example of Srimdo's, what he's talking about here. Srimdo had an interesting experience. It was winter and the windows were all closed. Okay? And it was midnight. And he is getting the smell of freshly baked bread. Now, nobody bakes bread at midnight. It's very rare. Okay? And the smell is not physical. The windows are all closed. It is winter. It is closed at midnight. Yet he could smell this. It's there in the record of yoga. So, he's saying that if my subtle vital is in tune with the subtle vital, universal subtle vital, then I can sense these things. That's what he's saying. Otherwise, if it's not in tune, you won't feel it. Okay, so this is what happens, for example, with the faculty called second sight. It is a process of all those psychic phenomena which seem to be seen and heard by the outer senses and are not sensed inwardly through representative or interpretative or symbolic images which bear the stamp of an inner experience or have an evident character of formations in a subtle substance. So what he's saying is, you can sense these higher truths, but if there is no correspondence between you and the higher truths, the vibrational level is not the same, the truths are revealed to you in images and symbols. That's what he's saying. That is the explanation for people seeing symbolic dreams. Okay? It is represented because at that level there is no language. Language is something of the physical world. So there you have gone beyond language. So how to explain the truths? Through images, through symbolic images. That's what Srimad is pointing out. Okay, so this is what happens, for example, with the faculty called second sight. It is the process of all those psychic phenomena which seem to be seen and heard by the outer senses, the physical senses, and are not sensed inwardly through representative or interpretative or symbolic images which bear the stamp of an inner experience or have an evident character of formations in a subtle substance. Now mind you, note the word subtle substance. The life plane is substance, but it is more subtle than the physical world. The mind planes also have subtle substance, more subtle than the vital and the material world. Okay, so there can then be various kinds of evidence of the existence of other planes of being and communication with them. Objectivization to the outer sense, subtle sense contacts, mind contacts, life contacts, contacts to the subliminal in special states of consciousness exceeding our ordinary range. All these things exist and they do happen. And we know that. There are psychics who can touch objects and, and put themselves into contact with the owner of that object. That can happen. We know that that's how they find out missing persons and all that. They use psychics. The same is pointing out that one. Our physical mind is not the whole of us, nor, even though it dominates almost the whole of our surface consciousness, the best or greatest part of us. Reality cannot be restricted to a sole field of this narrowness or to the dimensions known within its rigid circle. So to think that matter is the only reality doesn't stand examination. It's not like that. I am reading out a summary of what he said here in this para. It is clearly illogical and irrational to demand physical proof for supraphysical phenomena. It's an attitude of the physical mind whose axiomatic contention of the sole reality of matter is questionable. We can question them. It is of course possible that subtle supraphysical phenomena may impinge upon the physical senses, but that cannot be demanded or insisted upon as the only possible process. Examples he is giving. Ideas do change the world. Emotions can have disastrous or beneficial results in the world. Ideas are not physical. Emotions are not physical. Yet they can have tremendous impact in the physical world. That's what he's pointing out. Okay. What would be logical is to demand that life plane events influence our vital and mind plane events. I'll read that again. What would be logical is to demand that life plane events influence our vital and mind plane events influence our mind. That you can demand. That is logical. But these are not physically verifiable. But such influences from the life plane and mind plane may objectivize themselves materially, but that's a derivative secondary action. Such objectivization is possible when our subtle senses get connected with the gross senses and result in clairvoyance and clairaudience, etc. Psychic phenomena. But such materialization of subtle events need not happen all the time as a matter of course and cannot be demanded as the only possibility. In fact, subtle events remain subtle in the form of representative images and symbols and do not normally reveal themselves physically. Okay. Our physical mind is only a small part of our whole being, even if it be a large part of our superficial waking consciousness. The greatest and best part of man is the superconscient.
If it be said,
Yeah. If it be said that subjective experience or subtle sense images can easily be deceptive, since we have no recognized method or standard of verification, and a too great tendency to admit the extraordinary and miracle as or supernatural at its face value, this may be admitted. So what Srimad is saying is that let's look at the objection to all these things. If it be said the subjective experience or subtle sense images can easily be deceptive, they may not be true. Since we have no recognized method or standard of verification and a too great tendency to admit the extraordinary and miraculous supernatural at its face value, this may be admitted. He is saying that even if you are capable of seeing subtle realities, you may be mistaken. And that's exactly what happens in yoga. When you are crossing and going into your intraconscient, when you come to the vital plane, truth and falsehood is mixed there. And very often you can be misled. And that's why Srivastava calls it the intermediate zone. So first you have to go from the subtle physical, then you go into the subtle vital where this danger is there. So you get all sorts of truth and falsehood mixed. Then once you cross this area and go into the subtle mind plane, you are safe. But that is it is possible to be misled. So if the materialist is saying that you are hallucinating, Srivastava is saying that is some truth is there in it. Okay, that's what he's saying. But error, now another thing, don't you make errors in the physical world also? Does that mean that the physical world doesn't exist? That's the argument. Okay. So, but error is not a prerogative of the inner subjective or subliminal parts of us. It is also an appanage of the physical mind and its objective methods and standards, and such liability to error cannot be a reason for shutting out a large and important domain of experience. So, just because there can be error, it doesn't mean to say that everything is error. That's what Swami is pointing out. Okay, so, it's a reason rather for scrutinizing it and finding out in it its own true standards and its characteristic, appropriate and valid means of verification. Now, if you made a mistake in the physical world, you don't dismiss it as total falsehood. The whole physical world is not real. You can't say that. Similarly, if you find that there is an error, find out, explore, examine and find out why it is there. That's what he's saying. Okay. Such liability to error cannot be a reason for shutting out a large and important domain of experience. It's a reason rather for scrutinizing and finding out its own true standards and its characteristic, appropriate and valid means for verification. You can find out, just as in the physical world you can find out the reason for the error, there also you can do that, same thing. That's what he's saying. Okay. Our subjective being is the basis of our objective experience. Important statement. Our subjective being is the basis of our objective experience. That is more real than the objective. And it is not probable that only its physical objectivizations are true and the rest unreliable. That's not possible. The subliminal consciousness, when rightly interrogated, is a witness to truth, and its testimony is confirmed again and again, even in the physical world and the objective field. I give you one example for what he is saying here. The subliminal consciousness, when rightly interrogated, is a witness to truth, and its testimony is confirmed again and again, even in the physical and objective field. Srivendra is saying in 1920, he is saying India is free. Mother is saying already free. But it becomes a reality in the physical world afterwards. Okay, that's what he's pointing out here. Okay, sir. Therefore, that testimony cannot then be disregarded when it calls our attention to things within us or to things that belong to planes of worlds or worlds of a supra-physical experience. At the same time, belief by itself is not evidence of reality. Look at the way he is examining everything. At the same time, belief by itself is not evidence of reality. It must base itself on something more valid before one can accept it. It is evident that the beliefs of the past are not a sufficient basis for knowledge. So, whatever the past has been telling you, and you are saying that this is there, it's not enough to accept as real. It is evident that the beliefs of the past are not a sufficient basis for knowledge, even though they cannot be entirely neglected. For a belief is a mental construction and may be a wrong building. It may often answer to some inner intimation and then it has a value. But as often as not, it disfigures the intimation, usually by a translation into terms familiar to our physical and objective experience, such as that which converted the hierarchy of the planes. This is very interesting what he's saying. Such as that which converted the hierarchy of our planes into a physical hierarchy or geographical space extension, turned the rarer heights of subtle substance into material heights, and placed the abodes of the gods on the summits of physical mountains. In India, we say that the gods live in the mountains, in the Himalayas. So Swami is pointing out that subtler truths are being spoken of as physical, which is not the real thing. Okay, so all truth, supra-physical or physical, must be founded not on mental belief alone, but on experience. But in each case, experience must be of the kind, physical, subliminal or spiritual, which is appropriate to the order of the truths into which we are empowered to enter. Their validity and significance must be scrutinized, but according to their own law and by a consciousness which can enter into them, and not according to the law of another domain or by a consciousness which is capable only of truths of another order. So alone can we be sure of our steps and enlarge firmly our sphere of knowledge. Now, this is very interesting what he's saying here, and it's very, very important also. Each plane has got its own laws and its own rules, okay, and its own substance. What is true at that level, you cannot insist that it is true also at this level. Okay, that's the whole point. So, each level has to be judged by the laws of that world itself.
Yeah, Sri Aurobindo speaks about the law, and he says that at each level it changes.
That's right. That's right. It changes, and it's a very interesting thing actually. We can give some very interesting examples also. Okay, the laws change, but the basic character of the law remains the same. Okay, it's very interesting. Let's take desire. Okay, desire is a fact in the physical world, right? As it keeps going up, this desire with all its imperfections, you can desire something very noble, you can desire something divine, so it becomes aspiration. Now, aspiration and they are connected, but they are of a different order. So, okay. We are talking of laws, so I'll take a very interesting case and then we'll discuss that. See, at the physical level, there is attraction and repulsion. This is a law in the physical world. One example is magnets. You put two magnets, either they repulse each other or they attract each other. This is a law in the physical world. When you come to the life plane, does this law hold good? But of a different order. Okay? There is repulsion. I may hate somebody, or I may fall in love with somebody. So it has become a subtler law, same essentially the same law, but it has become different here. Okay? Then when you go into even the mind plane of consciousness, is there attraction and repulsion? Yes. I may like an idea very much. I may like a book very much. I may find a book disgusting. Okay? So, as you keep going up higher and higher, okay, this attraction and repulsion is possible when there are two. If there are no two, there cannot be. So at the highest level, there is only one. So the law of attraction and repulsion completely vanishes. So you can see how the laws which are there go on changing according to the. So take also, for instance, the law of gravitation. The law of gravitation is absolutely real in the physical world. It holds you down. Okay?
Go up.
Then you go to the subtler world, there is tamas which tries to hold you down, and there is aspiration which wants to take you up. So there is attraction to the thing below, and there is an attraction to the thing above. So this also is, the law is there in the physical law. But as you go there in the subtler worlds, life and mind, they all become totally different. We'll stop today.
Yeah, time.